Right, so welcome to the Radical Anthropology group. And this evening we have a speaker who I've been looking forward to hearing for many, many years, Dr. Ivan Tacey, but he's asked me to spend a little bit longer than I usually do in introducing tonight's topic. And I think if I do introduce the topic a bit, you'll kind of understand why we agreed to do this. Ivan's kind of breaking a taboo because he's going to be giving you some political implications of the fact that right around the world we have this, in all magical myths and fairy tales, we have this image of the dragon. And his talk is going to be about the politics of the dragon. And he's going to say a little bit more about the various forms this dragon takes. The feathered serpent in parts of South America, of course, and the rainbow snake in Australia, and of course the Chinese dragon everyone knows about, and St. George and the dragon. So there's a huge issue really as to what on earth's going on. Why do we have this very odd creature, kind of snake with wings, which is male and also female, in this world and the other, life and death? All these paradoxes in this, built into this one figure. Why is this figure so central to world mythology? Here in UCL, we're going to be on strike most of this term. I'm getting on a bit. I've retired. In some ways, whether I'm on strike or not doesn't hurt the management too much. But we have in the past, only last year actually, we have conducted these lessons, these talks, downstairs, outside, on the picket line. Why am I mentioning this? Because in RAG we have a theory. And the theory is that all human culture, kinship, morality, religion, language, all of this was born on the picket line. Of course, there are people that think picket lines are a recent invention. They've only been since capitalism. But the idea of bottom-up resistance, bottom-up solidarity, refusing to collude with your exploiters is a lot older than capitalism. And among other forms of strike action, as everyone really should know, if you know anything about resistance in other parts of the world, women going on strike is quite a powerful method of resistance, and you'll find evidence for going on strike, forming a picket line, a sex strike picket line, all over the world. Now, the point about a picket line is it's rather an unusual kind of organisation. Most organisations, certainly top-down organisations, the bigger they get, the more they start to fall apart. So you can get a big organisation, and it starts getting bigger, like an empire, or but as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it gets more and more sort of vociferous and fractured, and splits emerge, and before long the Roman Empire has collapsed. Maybe the American Empire or the Western Empire is beginning to collapse. The thing about a picket line is it's a very unusual bottom-up form of structure, because the bigger it is, the better. So if you're on strike in your own your own workplace, your own college, your own whatever it is, post office, dock, whatever it is, it's all right. It's good to be on strike, get everyone together, but it's much better to extend the strike a bit. Because it's better to extend the strike action, because it's better, more effective really, if you start to get some solidarity action. That's why, of course, the Conservatives in this country have made it illegal, have made, since the miners' strikes and so on of the 80s, made secondary picketing illegal. But the point is that it is better to have a big strike. And the strike can end up, of course, as a general strike, and it can even sometimes end up as an international strike. I'm very proud of the fact that back in the 90s, I helped link up the Liverpool dockers in their dispute with Reclaim the Streets. Reclaim the Streets was denounced by much of the left as Treehuggers. The Socialist Workers' Party, various different Trotskyist organisations. Chris, what are you encouraging the dockers to link up with Treehuggers for? Well, the Treehuggers were actually brilliant activists who supported the dockers like nobody else did, and we managed to take over Liverpool docks in 1996, and the anniversary of their dispute, and we managed to break through the censorship that had been imposed upon the dispute, and we went global. And the global dockers dispute, which affected Seattle, and actually there was a particular moment in the beginning of 1997, about a week pretty much, where pretty much every port in the world, not so effectively in Europe, but around most of the globe, it was like the world skipped a heartbeat. We had a strike action supported by environmentalists. Reclaim the Streets, were, of course, the motto was kill the car, long before Extinction Rebellion. We set the scene for the massive movements of the late 90s. Seattle, and everyone knows about this massive, huge things that linked together indigenous rights activists, particularly in South America, but also indigenous rights acts with trade unionists and, of course, environmentalists. And again, why am I mentioning this? Because you might think, what on earth has this got to do with the dragon? Well, the theory is that the dragon is that. The dragon is a picket line. It's the way in which indigenous people over the generations have conceptualized a form of solidarity which is bottom up, which is like forms a chain, which isn't hierarchical. It's not like an animal with a head and a neck and a body and feet and stuff. It's a horizontal organization, if you like. Dragons are kind of horizontal. But also, because it's a sex strike logic, it has particular features. And in the theory that we've used in the radical anthropology group here at UCL, we've argued that in order to get a general strike off the ground, very long time ago, with the emergence of Homo sapiens, in fact, having a local sex strike isn't too effective. If you're trying to make the males behave, because they've been not behaving very well in the recent period, don't just go on a sex strike locally. You need to extend your strike across the landscape. And the way that we think this was achieved was to use a clock which itself stretched across the landscape. And the clock was the moon. And once a month, women would go on strike. And by timing their strike action with the menstrual period and with dark moon, it meant that wherever men who wanted to break the strike, wherever they went, they would find, oh my God, these women are on strike as well. Oh, let's move around, find somebody. No, these are on strike. When you have a general strike timed in accordance with the lunar phase, it becomes a very powerful form of resistance. And then that moves you between being on strike, which means that women would have been with each other, with their blood and with their brothers, and then surrendering that action, surrendering the strike on the basis that if you like, the demands have been won, moving back from being on strike to being back in terms of sexual relationships. Sexual relationships would have happened at full moon. All the world's magical fairy tales make it very clear. The moon in June, the term honeymoon. Full moon means getting together, the moon's out, everything's safe, the lions aren't going to harass you in parts of Africa, and so you move between full moon and dark moon, at the same time moving between, if you like, marriage and kinship. This world and the other. So as a wife, you die every dark moon, but you come alive as a sister. But at full moon, you die as a sister and come alive as a wife. So you're moving between life and death, male and female, this world and the other, wet and dry, when the lunar synchrony begins to link up with seasonal synchrony. And the argument is very simple. We can test whether that logic of synchrony with natural rhythms, if you like, using the sun and the moon as your clock, alternating between seizing power and surrendering power, not seizing power in order to keep it, seizing power in order to change social relationships, but being just as happy and prepared to lose power, to surrender power, as to take it on condition, of course, that when you decide at full moon to surrender power, you'd only do so in the full knowledge and confidence next dark moon we will be back on that picket line and doing the whole thing again. I'm just going to show a little diagram of how that works in terms of the logic. Here we have a very simple early kinship system. And we have two families, if you like, two lineages, and we call them, when you've just got two, we call them moieties, from the old Shakespearean word moiety, linked of course to the French moitié. So we have two colours, moiety black, if you like, moiety white. And at dark moon, this is one of the moieties, people come together as blood relations, blood relatives. And at full moon, they come together like honeymoon. You move between this world and the other world, light and dark, kinship and marriage as the moon goes through its phases. And I hope you can just see that this rhythmic, cyclical movement is already reminiscent of the form taken by the dragon. And that's just another way of looking at it. So we have the clock, we have males and females, and at menstruation, women are with their brothers, not with their husbands, but at ovulation, But the clocks come round after a fortnight. You're back in with your sexual partner, your mate, as opposed to with your kin. I've kind of given you the theory. That's good. It does sound extremely unlikely. The point of the good thing about a really good scientific theory is it has to be unlikely, and then what you do is you test it out against the evidence. And a really powerful theory is a very improbable one, which when you test it out against the evidence, turns out to be correct. The predictions made by the theory, they pan out. Over to you. And I should finally just say that Ivan is very proud to say I was a student of mine going back many, many years at UEL in the 90s. He took this theory and thought, I wonder if it's true, and went to do his fieldwork, which he's going to talk about to us now.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Yeah, and I'd like to say as well the strike that Chris mentioned with when the Liverpool Dockers united with Reclaim the Streets. That was the very first anthropology project that I ever did, actually, my first field work. So, anyway.
Just a second, can I just...
Yeah. Right.
Sorry.
Okay, we'll just bring up my talk. Full screen. Right, I'm going to have to move back and forth and move through it. So, so I'm Ivan Tacey. I'm currently working at the University of Plymouth in the southwest of England. So my research interests are primarily about hunter-gatherers, egalitarianism, politics. So in all these things are interconnected, okay? So peaceability and violence are two other subjects that I've written about quite a bit. I'm interested in anthropogenic change, animism, shamanism, human-animal, or more broadly, environmental relations, but also things like globalization and development, because we're at a critical time in the history of the planet, not even just history of humans, and the entire world on a geological level. You know, we're entering the Anthropocene, you know, where humans are leaving marks on a geological scale. So, and you know, mass extinctions going on, and all kind of climate change and all kinds of other things. So anyway, yeah, Chris said that his theory kind of sounds improbable, and I like watching people's faces, you know, as he introduced the talk, and I can see people thinking, what's this bullshit, you know. But I tell you what, his theory is by far the most simple, I think, and straightforward. And if anthropologists working in all these different places would actually use this as a kind of starting point, everything falls into place when you look, whether you're looking at shamanism, animism, ritual, all kinds of other things, okay? So, anyway, I'm going to start with a story here. So, this is Aceh in Indonesia after the tsunami of 2004, okay? And so the Indian Ocean tsunami just devastated Indonesia, Thailand, the Andaman Islands, all kinds of places, okay? And, you know, you look at this power, these are whole cities underwater, just complete devastation. Anyway, the people that I work with, Batik, which are a very small group of hunter-gatherers from Peninsular Malaysia, numbering around 2,000, they said, well, we know why this happened. And they gave various people, you know, it's not like a total surety, it's exactly this that happened. Some people say, oh, well, this was caused by people laughing at animals. That could be one. This was caused by people chopping down the forest, okay, and devastating landscape. This was caused by the violence of the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Too much violence, too much blood being spilt on the land, and that blood going down into the underworld and causing this gigantic subterranean serpent that you find in cosmology, as we'll see, across the planet, causing her to writhe, okay? Causing the land to move, and then an upswelling of water, okay? And then causing a huge tsunami. One particularly interesting version of the story was collected by my friend and colleague, who I work closely with the Batik. Together we go out and do field work sometimes, Diana Rivoli from Panteo University in Greece. And in this version of the story, at this time, as she was collecting stories, lots of Malays were working as Malay women were working as in the Middle East as kind of household servants, basically. Okay, and there was a lot of stories in the media in Malaysia about them being abused, tortured, and so forth. And anyway, the Batek said, or a few Batek said, not the Batek, some Batek said that this was basically this poor Indonesian servant, domestic servant in the Middle East, had got fed up with this horrible abuse, and she had gone to the sea and done basically some kind of magic and thrown menstrual blood into the water. And after that, this menstrual blood had filtered into the water, okay, and it's the odour of it that goes down to this subterranean dragon, who then writhed, and this blood had kind of flown through the currents back towards Indonesia. And it's quite unsure where this kind of magical blood magic power was directed. Was it directed towards the abusive person in the Middle East? Was it directed towards Indonesia? Where? It was it's uncontrollable, okay? Anyway, ended up with this tsunami, okay? So I thought I'd start with that. We're going to come back to some similar stories shortly, okay? It's just a way to introduce it. Okay, so I just want to start out with a few kind of problems in anthropology, theoretical and methodological problems. Of course, there's a lot more, but anyway, these are some of the ones that I consider to be quite key. Okay, so number one, in anthropology, there's been a return to the study of animism. Okay, so animism was a term used in the 19th century, and then it fell out of use. People didn't want to use it at all. It's this kind of belief in spirits in the landscape. I don't know how many people here are anthropologists, non-anthropologists, so sorry if I'm simplifying things. But these relationships with spirits, that could be in a mountain, in an animal, you know, like a tiger, an elephant, a gibbon, a river, a waterfall, whatever. And anyway, there's been a return since basically the 90s with the work of Nurit Bird-David, okay, with the Nayaka. Then people like Tim Ingold, Eduardo Viveros de Castro in Amazonia, Philip de Scola in Amazonia, Rane Willislev in Siberia. All over the world, we've got people looking at animism again, okay, and saying, actually, Nurit Bird-Davis, first of all, she said it's an epistemological relationship. So it's all about knowledge, ways of knowing. That she's changed her ideas along with everyone else, and people say now it's all about ontology. It's ways of relating to different beings. Okay, so these relationships with spirits are considered like really real relationships, like me and Chris, but me and this spirit. Okay, if you follow me. Okay. However, for the large part, these tales about animism have remained completely apolitical. Okay. Completely ahistorical, okay? So for the structuralists like de Scola and Viveros de Castro, neo-structuralists, it's all about kind of structures, cognitive schemas in the mind or something. For phenomenologists like Tim Ingold and Bird-David, I think their approach is much more interesting. It's about how relationships emerge through actual activities, but still, and Bird-David said to me herself, yeah, you're right, you know, there's no politics in this, and there's no history in it, there's a problem, okay? Number two, there's a lack of dialogue between these people looking at new animism and people who've been looking at ritual, okay, like Chris, okay? Thirdly, these so-called relational ontologies, so these relationships people have with the spirits that we find across the world, we find them everywhere, and we see very similar cosmological forms, similar kinds of shamanism, similar prohibitions or taboos in all kinds of areas, but there's no kind of plausible explanation amongst the new animists why it's the same in Amazonia as amongst the Khoisan and amongst the Bayaka Pygmies and amongst the Batek of Malaysia and amongst the Inuit and all these different groups. Why is it the same everywhere? That's kind of strange. You know, why is the Naga everywhere? Why do we have these links with and taboos about the moon everywhere? Okay. Fourth, this is a big problem as well. So theories about shamanism and animism tend to be extremely gender biased, okay? Especially in Amazonia, not all, but a lot of Amazonian accounts. We'll see some different ones today. So where are all the women in these stories, okay? And number five, there's a kind of, Chris said I'm doing something tabooed. In a way, he's right for another reason, because once you start, in anthropology, people say, yeah, you can look at Central Africa, you can look at Amazonia, you can look here. But when you start making much broader comparisons from Amazonia to Australia to Africa, people are somehow get really wary. Well, why, you're talking about human origins. You can never know about human origins. That's a taboo subject. Would you agree? Yeah. They just don't want you to do it, Yeah, they can't connect the dots. If you don't connect the dots, I don't think no other scientist would do that. Okay, right. So here's a picture of the Batek, a Batek friend at Kuala Ko, a place that unfortunately 15 people died from poisoning from a manganese mine in the area last year. And when me and John, that's sitting just behind Chris, went out to visit them last year. Anyway, I work in lots of other areas too, but I primarily work in the Batek area here, which is now this green area is a protected area called Taman Negara. This white area on the map is basically all converted into palm oil now. Until very recently, this was all forest, okay? This is the same across the whole of Southeast Asia. It's what's happening in Central Africa. It's what's happening in Amazonia. I'm particularly interested in places on the forest edge, okay? So you get the most interactions with the outside world. You've got environments just being totally devastated via palm oil, quarrying, mining. Got influx of tourists, all kinds of other interactions. So this area from here down is Batik Day territory, and here is a group that I'm going to talk quite a lot about today, Batik Maya. Okay, they've got slightly different forms of shamanism, slightly different languages, but very similar lifestyles. Okay, so I've spent about 24 months, a bit longer probably now actually, from 2006 onwards. So they are. Some of the people are still full-time hunter-gatherer collectors, so they collect forest products and they trade them on with middlemen, Chinese or Malay middlemen. Some of them have been settled, but even the settled groups still return to the forest to forage. They're all gender egalitarian groups, or have been in the past. Things are changing slightly now with Islamization, with transformations to the economy and so forth. And you get different ways that men can try and claim power. They're an Orang Asli people. They're classified as Orang Asli, which means original peoples in the Malay language. They speak Austro-Asiatic languages, so this is like Mon Khmer languages. So the Batek's a northern Austro-Asiatic language. Generally, most people are animists, but there's nominal conversion to Islam, and there seems to be a few people now who have actually converted, if you like, rather than just nominally. But a lot of conversions it was really coercive, in fact violent, amongst the Batik Maya. I might come back to that later. So it's very small groups, only 1,500 Batik Day roughly, and 300 Batik Maya. Okay, and the current predicament for them is deforestation, mining, Islamization, a lack of land rights, which is the central problem for indigenous people anywhere on the planet, political marginalization and poverty. Okay, so it's just a couple of pictures here. These are this is a Batik Maya camp in the forest. This is a small Batik Day camp on the Ko River in the northern part of the park. Right, so going to get into some of the rainbow snake stuff now after that brief introduction. Okay, so in Batek cosmology, it's a kind of tripartite system, if you like. So we live on, can I move here, on this middle area, Earth, okay, which is balanced, if you like, on the back of this turtle dragon that my mum's done a picture for me of. Okay, so this is, sometimes they say it's a giant snake. Sometimes they say it's a turtle. Sometimes they say it's a turtle snake. But whatever it is, it's always a variant on this, a gigantic, world-creating Naga is the word they usually use. Batik Maya use another word. My brain's gone. Baji. They call it Baji. Okay. She's also, I say she because she's always associated with an old lady. In fact, sometimes one image of her is an old lady, And some Batek will say, no, actually there's two. There is the old lady who's got a big stick and she prods the snake when she has to move it. Other people say, no, they're exactly the same thing. Sometimes this is a singular entity. Sometimes people talk about many. That exists at exactly the same time, this idea of one and multiplicity, okay? And below this turtle dragon, or Naga, is this vast underground sea. So that's, like I said in that first story, when she writhes, she releases this water and it spews up through the world, causing devastating floods. Or her movement can cause earthquakes and so forth, mudslides, whatever you like. Above here is a kind of dome, if you like, where stars hang from, and you get various abodes of different people in the firmament, so in the celestial realm. First of all, you've got Gobar, or Kai, some people call him, or Kray, or Nku, the Temyar called him, the neighbouring group. He's a lord of thunder, okay? So he causes storms, lightning, rains, but he's a counterpart of this subterranean dragon, okay? They always work in tandem, okay? In my interpretation, I see Gobar as probably, he's been added on more recently, probably a long time ago, thousands and thousands of years ago, but I think the Naga is definitely more ancient. And also there's a lot of correlation between this Thunderlord, and he's kind of associated, if you look closely at it, with this slaving state, the Malay or Thai or Rawa or Batak state coming in, like Shiva's power coming in through these Indianized kingdoms in Southeast Asia, raiding people. And it's this he's stupid, he's terrifying, he's violent. But anyway, they work together. Also in the celestial realm, you have what are called the Hala Asal. These are kind of Hala Asal. These are like the ancestors and kind of the original shamans, you could call them, okay? And also you have the land of the dead up there, okay? And then we've got sun, moon in the sky. I think that's enough there for now, okay? So across the landscape where I work, you've got these beautiful limestone casts all over the landscape, okay? A couple of them are actually associated with this kind of central pillar linking the three worlds, okay? But there's loads of them. This is one in the Maya area. And people say, I said, well, you know, what caused these things? And they say, well, actually, they're the Tolong Naga, they're the bones of the Naga. And so of these creatures that have been moving and then petrified in the landscape. There's other stories as well. They're often associated with movements of ancestral kind of culture heroes across the landscape where people became petrified or animals became petrified, okay? So this one I'll talk about a little bit. This is Batu Bonte in Pahang. So here, these are what Keith Basso would say. They're kind of act as like mnemonic pegs, okay, where people hang stories, the mythical stories and stories of the ancestors. So here at this place, but that links historical and mythic time. There's no distinction between the two for them. So here, in a period where the Batik Maya were being chased by these Malay slavers, they're running through the forest. This is very recently, in the last 100 years or so. Suddenly, people get fed up with being chased, and at that time, everyone had this shamanic power, and they just all decided to turn into tigers, because Batiks are very famous for tiger transformation. So they kind of took their skins off and put on tiger skins, okay? And then scared off the Malays, okay? That's it. We'll come back to this shedding skin. They often use the metaphor of kind of like changing a shirt or changing a cloak, but it's really what you're doing is you're taking off your skin and you're putting on another skin of something else. And powerful shamans still today, well, they'll carry these skins of, they're not actual skins, we can't see them, but they're of tigers, of elephants, of whatever creatures they want to transform into. When they want to transform, they put them on, okay? Right. Another place here, this is an interesting one, Batu Kebang, okay? So here, Batiks were camped down near the caves, there's caves at the bottom there. And anyway, during the day, someone had laughed at a black millipede, which is one of these lawach or tabooed animals. And then as he laughed at this animal, suddenly, of course, the skies opened up with thunder, started pouring with rain. The earth deity, you know, this rainbow snake moved, and then the groundwaters zoomed up, you know, just water just flowing upwards and coming downwards as well. And then everyone was killed, okay? Even a shaman who tried to escape, he flew off, and then the Thunderlord grabbed him, killed him and chucked his kind of soul into this rock. If you go inside the cave, I mean, no Bateks will go in there, you can hear, they say, the ghosts of the dead all kind of screaming and things. If anyone tries to climb this, it will shoot upwards into the sky, so you just can't climb it, it's impossible. And so that's got a lot of ecological significance as well, because these places you get endemic flora and fauna on the tops of them, so they're totally protected in terms of you've got very rare orchids, cycads, geckos. You know, people that I know that have gone just for a few days. You know, heptologists, is it? Snakes and lizards, heptologists. Within 1 week, they found like 5 new species. People looking for orchids, the same thing, just a few days. They're really remarkable areas. Okay, moving on. Batu Taboyne, this is an interesting one. So this is my friend A. Wow from the village Batu Jelang. So again, so Bateks would camp basically where he's standing there. This is now his rubber trees here, before it's all forest, okay, at the foot of the hill there. Anyway, everyone had gone off into the forest looking for fruit or hunting and so forth, but one man had stayed there with his niece because he just wanted to relax. Well, actually, as Awao said, you know, he didn't really want to relax. His niece, she was really, really beautiful, you know, and he really liked her. And basically, he was just gagging for sex, okay, and he couldn't resist that. She really wanted him too. It's totally taboo because the breaking the incest taboo. So anyway, they had sex. Immediately, Kai, the Thunderlord, flew down, grabbed their bodies, took them up, smashed them on the rocks, and here you can see their blood, okay? So anyone thinks about incest, then you just have to mention, oh, Batu Taboyne, you know, don't know, everyone knows this story, you know, so this is how knowledge and myth and history are embodied, placed within the landscape, you know. Okay, there's so many of these, I could just go on about this topic for ages, so I won't though. Anyway, so olfaction, blood and taboos, the thunder complex. So these kind of taboos that I've just mentioned about laughing at animals, incest, but also there's taboos about letting menstrual blood flow into streams, about letting the blood of certain animals flow into streams. You find them across Southeast Asia. Rodney Needham called them the thunder complex, okay? He misses out the Naga. It would have been better, maybe the Naga, the serpent complex, I think, but anyway. So here are some of the Batek ones, but they're very, very similar amongst the Semai, the Temia, groups in Borneo, groups in the Philippines. You find them as far as China, much further away. So here's some. Letting menstrual blood or childbirth blood flow into streams. Okay, what happens if you do that? Well, basically the odour of the blood will travel down, like I said, down to the Naga, and then its collective punishment will get, and the odour will flow upwards as well. So the thunder god and the Naga provoke huge storms and floods, okay? Another way of doing that, laughing at animals, okay? Dressing animals up as humans, so confusing categories, that's a really important one, okay? So remember, shamans are these masters of changing skins, but you can't normally do it. You don't want to confuse these categories, like Mary Douglas would say. You cannot, the moon is called Bulan. To say that is taboo. Bulan, the word moon. You cannot say the word moon. You can't talk about bees. You cannot point at the rainbow, Dranak, or the moon. And the rainbow, Bateks often describe the rainbow as the shadow soul of the rainbow serpent. So you know, you're not going to point at it, you're not going to laugh at it. You cannot cook different tabooed animals on the same fire. So you can, it's quite complicated, Batek food prohibitions, but if two animals have a similar anatomy, you might be able to cook them on the same fire. If they have similar skin colour, you might be able to cook them on the same fire. If they inhabit similar habitats, you might be able to. So you're always thinking, well, that one, it does live in a similar habitat, but then it looks totally different. So basically, people play it safe all the time. No, we'll have another fire. So you're outside people's lean-tos, you find multiple hearths. Because if you cook things on the same fire, their odours will combine, okay, and then they will go up, and that's confusion of categories again, and then it provokes this wrath of these deities, okay. Cleaning certain animals like pigtailed macaques carcasses in streams, you can't do it because this blood, again, you've got to see this equation between certain kinds of blood together, menstrual blood and the blood of game animals. Another one here is chamam. It's a subcategory of lawach, and here is incest. So by incest, you've got things like, you can't have sex with your uncles, your aunts, your grandparents, your parents, your brothers, your half sisters, and so forth. But also, let's imagine Chris or this lady here is my mum. Sorry, okay. I can't even let my shadow cross her because that falls into the same shaman category, and that's the same with our odours, so you've got to keep, these are all variations of incest, okay. Of course, actually having sex is a bit more severe than mixing your shadows, but they're all in the same category. And then tola, violence and other forms of inappropriate social behaviour, spitting, shouting at someone, okay, anything like that, even thinking kind of bad thoughts about someone's dollar, and these are individual punishments, can have collective punishments as well, okay. So interesting, we've got bees in here, I don't know if you've noticed, and Chris mentioned in his introduction about honey. I mean, this is an important one because if a woman is menstruating, she cannot eat honey, okay? If she does, she's said to really tween, it means to trance. She'll go into a kind of uncontrollable trance. However, once I can't think of the word, stop menstruating, my brain's gone dead. The older women, menopause, yeah, sorry, my brain had gone dead. Then they can eat honey, okay? Okay, so it changes, everything changes there, that's interesting, okay? And I think I should mention this quickly. So I mentioned the Thunderlord, I've mentioned the Naga, I've mentioned this old lady. So a quick Maya origin story, okay? Long ago, there was this kind of original family, and you had Goba, or Kai, the Thunderlord, okay, but he's just a normal guy there. He was living on Earth as like a Malay. He was cultivating crops and so forth. And his brother, Luwei, who's now the honeybee, he was out foraging like a Batek. And their mother, Chapoy, was at home. Anyway, one day, Luwei was off foraging in the forest, going off hunting something. And he left Kai at home with the mother. And anyway, basically, when he was away, Kai raped his mother. Okay, so it's really, the most serious kind of incest you can have. Kai returned, saw what had happened, started attacking his brother. It's kind of transforming into a bee, if you like, stinging him, causing all these bruises, bumps and bruises all over him. And eventually, Chapoy, the old woman, she fled down into the underworld and became this earth deity, this subterranean Naga. Luwei, the honeybee, human honeybee at that time, chased off the Thunderlord, and that's why he lives up on his own up in the heavens. And then Luwei as well went up to live in the heavens. Okay, so you've got this really concrete connection between these things there. Okay. Right, anyway, if you do, imagine there's often storms, tropical storms in Malaysia. And then, so if one happens, someone will go, oh, damn, I laughed at a butterfly earlier today, or someone think, I did this, it's my fault, and people get really wound up about it, start shaking, and what am I going to do? And so basically what you'll do is you'll take a small knife or a machete, you cut into your shin here, you take some of the blood, you mix it with water in a receptacle like this, and then you'll say a few words, and you'll throw blood over your left shoulder, over your right shoulder, upward for the Thunderlord and downward for the Naga, okay? And then that will abate the storm, okay? So this is what this lady's doing here. This is a photo by Kirk Endicott, who worked with the Batte back in the 1970s. He's a good friend of mine. There are other ways. You can burn a bit of hair, okay? And also, different shamans know spells and things to stop storms, okay? That's a kind of a simple magic, if you like. Okay, but if you think about it, when you're letting menstrual blood flow into streams, or the blood of these game animals, and it's causing, or you're mixing these categories, you're transforming things that should be in distinct categories and times without, it's out of your control, okay? On the other side of that, when a shaman does it, or when people enter into a ritual together, they're doing it deliberately, it's controlled. You see, one is uncontrolled, one is controlled. That's important, as we'll see, okay? So some of the things at the moment that causes this extreme weather, tsunamis, floods, landslides and so forth, in the Batek point of view, it's because, one, you've got people breaking taboos, so it's people outside the forest breaking taboos. The Bateks know what they should and shouldn't do, okay? You've got the landscape being destroyed, you've got uncontrollable violence through warfare and other kinds of violence, new objects coming into the forest. This is an interesting one. So I've talked about the smells of blood, okay? Olfaction is one of the primary ways of communicating with the invisible world, if you like. And new things like, for example, deodorants, perfumes and things. If you go into a forest, they've got similar prohibitions to things like menstrual blood, okay? Because it angers these entities who then cause floods, okay? So, you know, sometimes you can rub leaves all over yourself when you go into the forest, but you don't want to carry these smells in, okay? Right. Okay, so as I mentioned, it's Rodney Needham who came up with this idea of the thunder complex that I've explained. Okay, we find it in Peninsula Malaysia, the Philippines, Borneo, Eastern Indonesia, even some variants as far as China. What are the problems? Well, in all these theories about the thunder complex, it's not just Rodney Needham, you know, Bob Denton's looked at it, Kirk Endicott's looked at it, Clayton Robercheck's looked at it, but they rarely make much mention of this subterranean flood-causing rainbow snake. They mention the taboos about menstrual bleeding, but they do not look at it in a kind of ritual theory framework. They don't make these links between blood, moon, serpents, women and flooding, okay? So they're kind of looking at it back to front, if you like, okay? And there's no comparisons with other areas of the world, okay, which is strange. I don't see why they're limiting it at Southeast Asia. Okay, so here's the sun and the moon. That's just some of these images are really to remind me what I'm talking about. Sometimes I've got long quotes, but it's just because I don't want to read from notes. Which is which? Okay, yeah, which is which, right. So here, the moon, okay? So long ago, another story, Batek say that humans had moon souls, okay? Nyawa bulan or water souls, nyawa tom. Okay, they're the same, a blood soul or a water soul. And what would happen then is people would live, and then when the moon goes dark, everyone died, okay? And then when the moon comes back, everyone's back to life. So remember what I said earlier, okay? The moon is associated with coolness, good, it's meant to be a beautiful, fragrant smelling place, whereas the sun is obviously hot, but it's also stinks, okay? It stinks of raw meat. Another point about the sun and the moon, I did write it down just in case. Where did I get to? Sun and the moon. Where's it gone? Oh, it's okay anyway. I think that's fine. You've got these myths anyway, but because long ago these people had this Nyawa Tom or Nyawa Bulan. Obviously, after a while, you've just got too many people on the planet. So Tohan, God, if you like, or the creator beings, took away this moon soul, okay, and replaced it with the Nyawa Pisang, which means a banana soul. And after that, when people died, then they're kind of continued by their children, but they die. Do you see what I mean? That's an important change. So if you think about back at the time of origins, it's living, dying, coming back to life, living, dying. It's this cyclical logic, okay? There is one other point I wanted to mention, but I've totally forgotten it, okay? Anyway, here we are. Now this is photos from when me and John were out with the Batik Maya last year. Here these women are preparing themselves with these beautiful leaves and decorations and flowers from the forest. Why? Well, one, they were telling us this is how we want to live. We don't want to wear these gob Malay clothes, basically. We don't want the forest to be cut down. This whole area where we're in here has been, there's marks on all the trees. It's all going to be logged over. And every year I go back there, more and more of the area is logged over. But also they wanted to show us, so here they are dressed up here. You'll see many more images from John's slides at the end. He's going to put them on rotation at the end. All these plants, that to make them look beautiful, they're to attract these good spirits, okay, through visual and olfactory stimuli, okay? Okay, so it's Tiang and Balung there. And here we are. They didn't perform a ceremony this day, I want to be clear, but they were very keen on saying this is what we do. And in fact, exactly 1 week ago, they were in the forest doing this, okay, the real version. So a shaman will sit in the center, okay? Women, young women and old women, will all sit around him, okay? The shaman will start singing, and he will invite these spirits, which are called ejum, which are his spiritual allies, into his body, okay, into his heart soul and his head soul, okay? The women sitting around there will normally be playing bamboo kind of drums, okay? And they will be singing too, okay? Once his body is filled with spirits, it will erupt out his soul, okay? And then with the spirits will fly off, okay? This is, other Batiks don't have spirits coming into their body, they just journey off, but this is quite different. It's a bit more like Malay forms of shamanism as well, have this spirits coming in. But what's really interesting is when he goes off, all the women go with him too. So they all fly off in this collective together up to the realm of these Chenil, which is original people, if you like, original spirits, and then they bargain for fruit blossoms. And up in the heavens, it's like this beautiful river of fruit is flowing along, and also you see these beautiful entities who have kind of tattoos or marks on their body of which fruits, and then the shaman will kind of beg for these fruits to be sent down, and then they'll drop them down and they'll fall into the forest, and then that will ensure a beautiful harvest. He might also bargain for game animals, good health, and so forth, okay? Right, that's a Batik Day ritual, Kunsing, which is the same thing for the fruit as well. Okay, that's in northern, it's in Kelantan, okay, further north. Right, okay, so now, moving away from the Batik, I want to have a look at some similar stuff from Aboriginal Australia. So here we've got a picture of the Aboriginal rainbow snake. We've got loads of these pictures coming up. And I'll tell you a quick story. Now, this is a story called the Wawalak sisters. So when the Wakul, younger sister, who was not bleeding, okay, began to dance to hinder the snake's progress, the Jalungal, rainbow snake, stopped her in her course and watched the dancing. But the girl grew tired and called out, "Come on, sister, your turn now, I want to rest." The older sister, Gungman, who was bleeding afterbirth blood, came from the hut, leaving her child in its cradle of soft paper bark, and began to dance. But her blood, still intermittently flowing, attracted the snake further, and she moved towards them. "Come on, sister," cried the Gungman, "it's no good for me, my blood is coming out, and the snake is smelling it and coming closer. It's better for you to go on dancing." So the younger sister continued, and again Jalungal stopped and watched. In this way, the Wawalaks took in turns to dance. When the younger sister danced, the snake stopped, but when the older one continued, she came forward. The older one's bleeding. So the youngest girl danced longer than the other, and as she swayed from side to side, the intense activity caused her menstruation to begin. Then the python, smelling more blood, came forward without hesitation. So you see again this exact thing, this underground enormous rainbow snake, okay, attracted by the odour of blood, okay? And you've got these particularly menstrual blood, okay? And so you've got a kind of a mini collective going on there, okay? Okay, so all across Australia, you've got stories exactly like the ones we find in Southeast Asia as the world being created by either the moon, a great snake, or the All-Mother. You see these correlations, they're exactly the same thing, okay? Or some other semi-human immense entity who combines lunar tidal features with snake-like, mother-like, and a rainbow-like one. So that quotes from Chris, but he's citing Hyatt, Buckler, and Maddock. You can look at there's just tons of stories. It's just filled with these same stories across Australia. So here's another one from Radcliffe Brown. The wowie is a serpent. That's just a random rainbow-like snake figure here. So it's quite interesting. She's got the snake's head and a serpentine body and then fins on it as well. Anyway, the wowie is a serpent-like creature which lives in deep water holes and burrows into the bank where he makes his den. When a man, so basically a shaman, is going on a visit to this monster, he must paint all his body over with red ochre. So why do you think he could do that? If you're taking Chris's theory, he's doing exactly what we'd expect him to do. He then follows after the rainbow someday, and when there's a thunder shower at the end of the rainbow, rests over the waterhole in which is the wowie's abode. The man then dives under the bank, so he's going into this underground, subterranean, watery world where he finds Wowie, who conducts him into his den and sings him a new song for the corroboree. The man repeats the song after the Wowie until he's learnt it sufficiently, and then starts back to his own people. When they see him returning, painted red and singing, they know he has been with a Wowie. Okay? So, for Batik shamans as well, when they want to learn songs from spirits, which could be the rainbow snake, that's a particularly powerful one, that's what they do. They learn these songs, and these songs constitute afterwards often paths through the cosmos. So you journey around their kind of pathways. Songs, pathways, threads, it's the same imagery always. Okay. So another quote here from Chris. Almost all over Aboriginal Australia, divinity or ritual power is conceptualised, among other things, as an immense rainbow, which is simultaneously a snake. Okay, that's exactly the same in Malaysia, and we'll see it's exactly the same in Amazonia. Knight argues rainbow snake variations are endless, leading us to suppose that what all these myths are referring to is not really a thing. So you can't, you've got people saying, well, actually, yeah, it must be based on the anaconda, or maybe it's based on the crocodile, or maybe it's based on the python. They're looking for an actual animal. There's no point doing that. It's a type of logic, a cyclical logic, which lies beyond and behind all these many concrete images: moon, snakes, tidal forces, water holes, rainbows, mothers, and so on. Okay, so just think about the skin sheds of a snake. A snake is kind of like a penis, but it also swallows things. It embodies male and female. With the rainbow, it links the underworld with the sky world. It's just filled with these images. So the Dalabon term Bolung signifies not only rainbow, snake, and the mother of us all, but also ambiguity in form, creativity, power, and time long past. It's particularly interesting to look at these linguistic terms, okay, because they often encode a lot of things in one term, okay. So here I'm moving to Amazonia now. If you're interested in the Aboriginal stuff, you can Google it and you'll find tons of myths. You can even get cartoons that are on TV about the rainbow snake. Okay. So here I've started with this picture of the Milky Way over the Amazon, because the Milky Way is also said to be the rainbow snake at night. Okay. So Rowe talks about Amazonian cosmologies as serpentine worldviews. Okay. I also have this tripartite cosmos, which is very similar to is identical to the Batik one I talked about. Sometimes groups around the Batik or other groups in Amazonia add on different layers to the celestial realm, but or the underworld, but it's always this basic tripartite logic. So during the day, the sky is the realm of the rainbow as great snake, tempest with rain or hail, lightning flash, and thunderclap. So you see here, she replaces Gobar or Kai, the Thunderlord of Malaysia. Okay. At night, this realm becomes the Milky Way, itself a gigantic snake. Subterranean worlds are primarily subaquatic in Amazonia and feminine. Okay, so these are the kind of things that we see associated with rainbow snakes in Amazonia: anacondas, caimans, turtles, piranhas, armor-headed catfish, and pink freshwater dolphins. Okay. So for Rowe, he comes up with this kind of bizarre schema, talking about celestial dragons that he separates from subterranean dragons, and he's kind of puts everything off into different categories. it should be understood as the celestial dragon is the sub-aquatic dragon. It's the same thing, it's just in a different form there. Anyway, we associate the celestial dragon with excessive celestial water, that is the deluge, the tempest. These are the torrential downpours accompanied by high winds, hurricane, associated by excessive noise, din, thunderclap, and accompanied by natural excessive fire lightning. But remember, above Amazonia, the biggest river in the Amazon is the sky itself. That's got more water in it than the river. So it is this snake above the snake of the Amazon itself. The subaquatic dragon is also the master or mistress of excessive terrestrial water floods. Coming from the fecund but dangerous lower realm, this dragon is the bearer of root crops and fruits, but is also the incestuous aquatic seducer of women, who are his fishwomen daughters, and the initiator of menstruation and decay. Okay, his ally is the night. All right, his ally is the celestial his ally is the night. He is the long subaquatic phallus of the moon, just as the celestial dragon partakes in some of the brilliance of the sun's headdress. Sorry. So you see all these things that Chris mentioned that sounded maybe a bit wacky at the beginning, you see them everywhere, okay? So a particularly interesting anthropologist that specialised on Amazonia is Luisa Elvira Belaunde. So she proposes what she calls a cross-cultural snake-like theory of blood, articulated around the notion of change of skin and body that's key to Amazonian perspectival shamanism and cosmology. So this word perspectival, it's a word used by Amazonianists to talk about the way that underlying everything, if you like, whether it's humans, animals, landscape features, everything has a kind of human-like soul, and the way that things perceive. So if let's imagine I'm a tiger, I'm looking at Chris, I see him as meat, okay? But then if Chris enters the shamanic world and he encounters me, he'll encounter me as a kind of person, a human-like person. This is the perspectival view of reality, okay? You know, like vultures will see a rotting carcass as delicious food. It won't look like a rotting carcass to them. Okay. So a few quotes from Belaunde, because she just expresses it perfectly in her theory. So throughout the Amazon, bleeding is related to women's intimate relationships with anacondas. The water anaconda is a master of dédoublement, for it has a two-forked tongue and penis, may live in water as well as on land and in trees, and embodies the cosmic rainbow, an underwater I think I missed a bit. An underwater serpent regarded as the mother or owner of all snakes. So if we go back to the Batik, this underground Naga, all her kind of minions are snakes, pythons, crocodiles, all of these creatures, they're the kind of like her avatars, if you like. So it's exactly the same thing. So here, remember, I mean, another way of interpreting rainbow snake myths, for example, in Borneo, people say, oh yeah, it's all because the rivers are just like, they're all flowing, it's all about flow. But then they miss the rest of it, the rest of the flow about menstrual blood, about game animals and so forth. Anyway, in Amazonia, menstruation is widely attributed to women's snake-like shedding of skin body and their synchronicity with moon cycles, okay? All across Amazonia. Okay, so remember this skin body and the shamans transforming as well. It's kind of an appropriation of this power, I would say. Okay, so similar to the Batik and other orang asli in Malaysia, in Amazonia, menstruating women generally interrupt most or at least some of their daily chores and observe a period of sexual abstinence, eating food considered bland, such as vegetables and the meat of animals and fish, which is said to have little blood. It's if they can eat any meat, okay? Their diet excludes the meat of animals regarded as having lots of blood, such as tapir. Women also avoid going to the river or the forest, touching any piece of material culture and coming close to men. This is the same amongst the Batik. You know, menstruation women can't touch blowpipe darts. They have to be covered normally by leaves if they're walking through the forest and it's raining, because it's feared that that would transport this bad stench up and downwards. So it's just identical things again, okay? In fact, when I read these things, I'm always slightly shocked. Well, it's exactly the same. The blood let by people has a transformational effect upon lived experience and opens up the curtains of communication and perception, usually separating daily experience from other cosmological space-times. Right, this is important. Its interconnection with shamanism is therefore fundamental. Okay, so you can't really understand shamanism, she's saying, if you don't understand this lunar, cyclical, serpentine blood logic. Throughout Amazonia, letting blood is the change of skin and body par excellence, and it is women who most saliently bring it about in their menses and childbirth. Okay. Another one, sorry I've got a few, but they're important ones I think. So a woman is changing skin with menstruation. That's why she cannot go to the forest or stay under the sun or go to the river. If she walks by the river, a violent wind awakes. In the trees there is a species of stork called Butuasena that come down to earth and take on the shape of any animal. They come down trees to attack the woman who has her menses, and they may take her to their house. In that moment, the woman becomes crazy when she sees how animals come out of everywhere to kidnap her. So that's not an anthropologist writing. That's not written by Chris or me or Radcliffe Brown or anyone. This is a healer who is cited in a book by Kaj Arham, okay? I mean, it's exactly what we would predict him to say is there, okay? I also wanted to say this thing. So when my wife was pregnant, Batek said to me, look, Ivan, you can't go into the forest because you will smell of the blood of your wife and the elephants and the tigers will attack you, okay? So it's exactly this thing, these animals being provoked into attacking, okay? Right, another story, because stories are great, I think. Listen, I'll tell you, said Basta. In the darkness, Moon made love to his sister. It was evening and he kept making love to her. She wondered who her lover was, so in the darkness she painted half of his face with black genipa. The next day she watched the men going along the path. Suddenly she saw the man. No, it cannot be. It's my older brother who has genipa on one side of his face. May you die, she said. May a foreigner kill you. He ran off from his angry sister, crying. Okay, so it's slightly. Oh yeah, this is not really the moon. It's a modified picture of the moon, but I thought it was for fun.
With his stains on him. The origin of the spots on the moon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so again, it's very, very similar to the Batek story I told you earlier, and this time it's the moon, and moon plays a very important role in Amazonia. So, in Amazonia, women's cycles are also closely associated with the moon. The moon governs the tides, the waning and waxing of all liquids, including blood, as they run along meandering snake-like rivers and veins. In Amazonian cosmology and mythology, moon is a major figure, often explicitly paired to the water anaconda, the rainbow snake, yep. As in the Kashinahua figure of Yubei, moon snake. Okay? Yet the figure of moon has been left out of most theoretical debates. That's if you want to understand it, you have to understand this lunar logic. Okay? One more, I think. Okay, so among various Amazonian groups, when women bleed, they're said to see moon, reenacting in their blood flow the mythical events of moon's incest and revenge. Okay. However, women's blood is seldom given attention in the dominant paradigm of incest established by alliance theory, such as in Levi-Strauss. Okay. So as I said at the beginning, you know, women are left out of the picture. The moon's left out of the picture. It makes it very difficult to understand what's going on in shamanism. I mean, the stories collected by new animists are fascinating. It's brilliant ethnographic fieldwork being done, but it doesn't really make sense unless you take into account these other things. Okay, so again here, I mean, lots of Amazonians have talked about trance and using psychoactive plants, you know, ayahuasca and various other plants. However, Belaunde, she equates these psychoactive plant substances with blood, if she likes. She says this is the most powerful transformational substance. Okay, so the stench of blood does not enable the communication with divine space-time for healing purposes. Instead, it sets in place uncontrollable space-times of transformational multiplicity. where animal plant spirits take human form, as they had during the primordial mythical space-times, and take revenge upon humans, seducing and stealing those who are made perceivable by the stench of blood, rendering these, unlike themselves, sick and alien to their human kin. Okay, so remember also when I talked to you about this Indonesian, the story of the tsunami as well. It's this uncontrollable power there as well. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the Batek just to finish up with the talk. It will take about 2 minutes, okay? Is that in time? Yep. Okay, so here, this is part of the landscape degradation in that area. This whole area around Merapo has been mined. In the north of Taman Negara, it's been mined across the whole of Malaysia. This is the Kuala Ko area where these people died last year. This is converted to oil palm in 2012. Then a series of mines opened up. This is the Demai quarry associated with the Thunderlord, this place. It's being mined. People said that it's going to cause floods. It's going to provoke, big problems. And here we have the Japanese tsunami. So just to finish off, I'm just going to finish with another kind of interesting story where I was sitting in a village at Batu Jelang back in 2012. And a man came over to me and said, listen, our shaman has just been off to Japan. I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah, he went to Japan and he met these Ajum, these spirits. So then I realised it's a soul journey. He hasn't actually taken a plane to Japan. And he's travelled down into the underworld of Japan. And the Ajum spirits have given him these cosmic threads. And he has tied back the rainbow snake, who was writhing, that caused the earthquake. And he's tied together the underworld to hold it in place. And he said, now there won't be any more earthquakes here. So it's quite interesting because this story, because one, he's acting on a transnational level, again, in a similar way to the story about Indonesia. And what Chris said, what's important is this kind of, this, you've got to think on a kind of global scheme of things. And I mean, in any storm, even if it's a small local storm, a Batik shaman will take down these threads from these spirits and thread them through trees to stop trees falling down onto villages. It's fundamentally connected with water and this power of tidal power, water power, storm power. And they tried to, like the shamans that Harry Walker talks about in Peru, they're kind of doing a form of climate politics here. And I think that's one way that Batek shamans are trying to position themselves on the world stage, and like lots of other shamans are as well, because they're seeing this devastation firsthand and they're trying to act upon it, okay? It's not just on a cosmological level. They also do send actual letters to NGOs, foreign governments, all kinds of people. So it's not just a kind of naive way of changing the world. But this destruction destroys whole villages. This is a town downstream, Gua Masang, Kuala Kray. So the transformation, the ripping apart of the landscape in Malaysia and other places is not just causing problems for indigenous people themselves, it's actually causing problems across the nation states, across local regions and across the planet as a whole. Bateks and all other Orang Aslis have told me stories about the world's getting too hot, it's getting too hot, it's getting too hot, okay? And they're not just drawing upon kind of Western environmental ideas about climate change. They really do think it's getting too hot. And it fundamental to that, if we go back to the picture when I had of the sun and the moon that I forgot what I was talking about, I mean, it's this separation between the forest is cool, the forest keeps things, is the source of life. Outside the palm oil, the towns, they're heat, they're hot, they're dangerous, they're disease-ridden. Okay, so it's this massive contrast there. Okay, so conclusions. So hopefully, I don't know if I did my job well today. I feel like I've been rambling a bit, but anyway. Knight's theory, in my mind, is by far the simplest explanation for why we find similar cosmological forms, rituals, prohibitions, myths, shamanisms and animisms all across the planet, okay? I mean, I took Amazonia and Australia and Malaysia as an example today. We could take lots of other examples, okay? The serpentine worldviews of Amazonia, Southeast Asia, Australia, Africa, and elsewhere can be best understood through a snake-like theory of blood, as Belande and Chris propose. Okay, transformational animism, shamanic skin shedding, menstrual prohibitions, moon and dragon myths and rituals, and the thunder complex should be understood as all one aspect of the same thing. It just depends which way you're looking at it. Okay, they all make sense if you use Chris's theory. And we just say, well, yeah, that's probably what happened, at the beginning. That's how human culture, and it's so important, it's remained in, of course, these forms are going to vary, okay? But you will find it wherever you look on the planet, because it's so important, okay? And lastly, animisms, blood rituals, and shamanisms must be understood as politics, okay? So whether in ancient times in terms of this human symbolic revolution, or throughout history where people have tried to gain power or take power from women, okay? So, I mean, there's a lot of, in cultures all across the planet, women are put into menstrual isolation huts, separated from things, which can, of course, be a way of subjugating women, okay? And it is in a lot of places, okay? That's politics, but also today with these climate shamans, these activities of Batik shamans, shamans from South America, this is politics too, okay? There's lots of other aspects of why this should be political, but I'm hoping they will have become obvious through the talk. If not, you can email me and I can explain more. Okay, thanks very much. Right.